Milwaukee's Giannis Antetokounmpo might be injured, but that hasn't stopped the buzz from building whether he's played his last game for the Bucks. Is Miami still interested in adding the Greek Freak? And Wes, you've got some other names that could be potential trade options as well.
I do, and it sounds like multiple teams could be after Andrew Wiggins.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang, become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up for the Everydayer Club with the link in the show notes. I'm Wes Goldberg. I'm the host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real Jam Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Got a jam-packed show for you today. Another team has emerged as a potential Andrew Wiggins suitor, and we'll answer some listener questions about the trade deadline here in a second. But let's start with the big news over the weekend that Giannis is going to miss several weeks after re-aggravating a right calf injury in Friday night's loss to the Nuggets. If you didn't think that the Bucks season was already over before that injury, well, you probably do now. The Bucks are 18-26, or 2.5 games back of the 10th seed in the play-in tournament. That gap is likely to get bigger with Giannis out for what he says could be 4 to 6 weeks. Over at Locked On Bucks, they're talking about tanking right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to trade Giannis, who expects, like I said, to miss 4 to 6 weeks. But according to Mark Stein, several teams, even after the injury, are still calling the Bucks about trading for Giannis before the deadline, despite the injury. A bunch of stuff that we want to get into here, David, including what the Heat can offer for Giannis, if indeed they are one of these teams that Mark Stein is reportedly saying is still calling Milwaukee. We'll also talk a little bit more about Giannis' potential fit with Bam Adebayo and what that means for the Heat in a second. But should this latest injury to Giannis make the Heat think harder about trading for him in the first place?
Should it make them think harder? We talked about that yesterday. I know I brought it up, and I know it's a concern, but I also, even as we were talking about it, the opportunity to acquire a superstar, especially one of Giannis's caliber, is too great to pass up, even with the injury concerns. I know that they should be cautious, but you never know what these injuries would be like if he was playing in Miami, and he's carrying a greater load there than he probably should be. And I know the injuries are unavoidable, so you go into it knowing that there's going to be some kind of level of concern, but you still do it 10 times out of 10. Like I just harken back to how this organization has always operated. When they acquired Tim Hardaway in 1996, there were rumors about his knee being wonky. He was up for an extension. He was up for a contract, and he had some knee issues, and basically they didn't need him in Golden State when he was acquired. And Miami was like, okay, we'll take him, and that worked out pretty well for the Heat. So I think that what happens with a former team isn't necessarily something that scares off a front office. It's not like it's going to be a lingering issue or something that's going to be a huge concern. And I think they still try to pull a trigger on any kind of deal to get a player like Giannis because, well, he's one of one. He's one of the best players on the planet. And anytime you can get a player like that, you make that move 100 times out of 100.
He is 31 years old. He has a history of injuries now that is pretty they're there. Like this guy was once considered sort of an Iron Man. He's not that anymore. And there's been several seasons lately that he hasn't been able to finish because of injuries. And with these calf strains, they're always scary, right? Especially when you start talking about the soleus, which was what Giannis was talking about after that game in Denver.
Self-diagnosed.
Right. He's like, it's probably the soleus, 4 to 6 weeks. You're like, okay, it's like, I've done this. There's a lot of I've been here before stuff with Giannis lately in these post-game comments. Like he's really feeling himself as an NBA vet. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a senioritis type of thing. It's like, all right, like, I've been here. I know where all the hallways go, like kind of thing. But so that part's scary, and that stuff starts to get like, you start to hear the word Achilles thrown around every once in a while, and that stuff is always scary, okay? And if I'm the Heat, I am thinking about that, right? But at the same time, and this was brought up to me recently, he's never had a major surgery, and because he's never had a major surgery, you're not worried as much about this. This isn't Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles and having to undergo that surgery, and the Brooklyn Nets kind of taking a chance on that. Like, we didn't know what Kevin Durant was going to look like on the other side of that Achilles surgery. We don't know, frankly, what Jason Tatum is going to look like on the other side of this one. You know what I mean? Like, those are scary things. Giannis hasn't had that. It's been a couple nagging things, lingering things here and there. But for the most part, he hasn't had that kind of level of structural damage that where at 31 years old, you're like, his body might break down faster than we think, right? He doesn't have the Dwayne Wade knee surgery in his past where just overnight it was like, oh, he just doesn't have that athleticism anymore. Plus the fact that Giannis is 7 feet tall. Like, he's always going to be near the basket. So I'm not as concerned about it, is where I ended up landing. It's scary. I don't like seeing these injuries keep happening to him. Right. But to your point, like, this isn't even Durant at 37. This guy is, you can make the case that Giannis is the second best player in the league right now, behind Jokic. Like, it's there to me is a clear top three. It's Jokic, Shea, and Giannis, and you can put them in whatever order you want, and I'm not going to debate you that hard on it, as long as you got Jokic number one.
Well, it was a pretty startling statistic and kind of a reflection of how bad this roster is. They're 11-11 with Giannis playing, and then like 3-12 without him. Like,
yeah, and all the lineup data is like, this is the best team in the. They're basically close to the Denver Nuggets on offense and like a top 10 defense with Giannis on the court. And when he gets off the court, it's a complete apocalypse. Like, they can't do anything. So this guy's awesome. This guy's awesome. And I've heard people say, well, he's got the injuries, and so like you weren't willing to throw everything for Kevin Durant. Why would you do it for Giannis? And my answer to that is, this is Giannis.
6 years younger.
6 years younger than Kevin Durant. If I'm getting Kevin Durant 6 years ago, then you are trading all that stuff for Kevin Durant, right? Like, there's no question about that. They tried to do that. They just didn't have all the stuff that they have now. So, yeah, to answer my own question, I'm still doing it. I'm still
level 1 to 10. How concerned are you about injury? I'm about a 3, I would say.
I'm like a 3 or a 4 with him, just because again there's a history there. Right. But I don't care anymore because of this latest calf strain. You know, like my scale didn't change after this calf strain. So look, the report now from Mark Stein is that teams are still calling, right? Like, don't take our word for it. Take the NBA's word for it. They don't care. They don't care either. That they're still in on Giannis. The Heat have to be one of these teams. I would imagine they are certainly one of these teams that are still interested in Giannis. This is the guy that they've been waiting for, right? And so I think what you could do here over the next couple of weeks is you're seeing the vultures start to swarm Milwaukee and say, like, what are you really doing here, right? The Bucks have their pick is involved in a swap with New Orleans. One of those picks goes to Atlanta, but Pelicans stink and the Bucks stink. Like, regardless of whether or not the Bucks get their pick or the New Orleans pick, right? Because the better pick ends up going to Atlanta. The worst pick stays with Milwaukee. It's going to be a good pick. It's potentially going to be a top 10 pick in a really strong draft class. There's a lot of incentive for the Bucks to tank, and helping them tank could be trading Giannis, right? Yeah. So I think that's why you see teams still calling about, hey, just because he's injured, we'll still take Giannis.
Yeah, I don't think any team is dissuaded by anything. And look, we've talked about it many times before. I mean, these things build up slowly. Everybody kind of thinks that there's an immediate phone call and the deal gets done, etc. With the exception of the Luka Doncic trade, that does not happen. These are ongoing conversations. People take a barometer on how a player feels or how an organization feels, and I think the buzz has been building for long enough now where we know that there's probably going to be a dissolution at some point. Like, the Bucks have to move on. They've got to get some clarity. They know they're not going to be competitive anytime soon. Whatever deal they make, and we've heard rumblings that Milwaukee might be buyers towards a trade deadline to try and supplement their roster. What are they going to do? Like, there's no move available. The move that everybody keeps talking about, an acquisition of a superstar, is Giannis. The Bucks don't have anybody on that roster to trade that's going to land them a superstar to complement Giannis to get them into title contention. So either you kind of stick with him and kind of become or continue to be mediocre at best, or you move on and you thank him for his time, and it's all goodwill. And you know what? He'll eventually be a Buck at some point in the future and retire that way, I'm sure. But
he'll
for
have a statue outside of that arena at the very. I mean, that's the arena he built, right? Like, they don't build that new arena if not for having Giannis and making those runs that they made. It does sort of feel like this injury could also give Milwaukee a little bit of an out here, right? Because nobody wants to look like the bad guy, but they could say, like, look, we need to tank. Well, this is the time to do it. These teams are still calling, despite the fact that you're hurt. Giannis, you don't have to ask for the trade. Like at some point, if you're John Horst, the general manager of the Bucks, don't you call him into your office and say, like, look, man, like, this might be it. This might be the time. Give us a list of preferred destinations. We're gonna do right by you, right? Nobody wants to look like the bad guy here. Like, let's figure this out, because they got a chance to get a high pick in a good draft, and plus whatever else they get for Giannis. And by the way, if you're a team that's trading for Giannis, whether or not you think you're a contender this year, or maybe you're kind of building it for next year, you can slow play Giannis coming back. Like, for instance, if you're the Miami Heat, right? You could trade for Giannis, be patient with his return to play. You're trading presumably rotation players who help you win games right now to get Giannis. What's to say that you can trade, like, if you're the Heat, trade for Giannis, slow play his comeback. Maybe you end up with a lottery pick of your own in a good draft. And now we're talking about a team with Giannis, Bam, and maybe a lottery pick added to it. Like, that is, to me, very interesting, especially if I'm Giannis right now. So, look, another big question that the Heat need to consider. Is Giannis and Bam a good enough duo to compete for a championship? That's coming up next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax's full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can just meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or even connect online, and they handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. The NBA trade deadline is basically here. We want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a group chat to keep up with the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Heat fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans from across the league. You also get ad-free versions of this show. And if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use the code DEADLINE to get your first month for free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. The Bam and Giannis fit is another question that I think a lot of Heat fans have, right? Because the idea of, well, you're going to trade for Giannis, you're going to trade Kel'el and these rotation players and these first-round picks, but is Bam and Giannis good enough as a duo to compete for a championship? I think defensively, there's no question that team is good enough to be the backbone of a championship caliber defense. Obviously, David, the concerns are on the offensive end, right?
Yeah. And I think there's a kind of this preconceived idea, and we've seen it go through so many different iterations when it comes to discussing Bam Adebayo, especially when he just endured his mini slump. Not mini slump, maybe a prolonged slump, whatever you want to call it. And the idea is that as the ersatz center, that he should be playing close to the basket, that his attempts at the rim should be higher, that he should be able to finish that way through traffic. And that's mostly how people view Antetokounmpo's game as well. It's when he's cutting, he's slashing, going downhill. These are the things that make him as dominant as he has been. And so there's this clogging of the lane that seems like it's going to naturally take place with two of these players that should be playing in the painted area. But that's not who Bam is anymore. And I don't think that's necessarily what you want him to be either. So if Bam is playing the way we've seen him, kind of going into the mid-range, also being able to stretch the floor as effectively as he has been over the last few games and continuing to build that way, I don't see why there would be a clash there and stylistic approach on offense. Like, you're going to have Adebayo out on the perimeter or even 18, 19 feet out, and then you're going to have Giannis attacking the rim the way he does. And if it's clogged, if it's a defender there kind of waiting to meet Giannis, of all people, at the rim, well, I think Antetokounmpo over the course of his career has evolved into a solid enough playmaker where he can just make, as strong as he is, he just has that ball in one hand and he just whips it out to the corner. And the idea of having Bam out there from the three-point line in that comfy corner, being able to knock down that shot, I think that's a good style of offense. And if you're looking at it from another level, I think if you have Giannis drive the hoop, And I think Bam could be another guy who could be working as a trailer too, another secondary guy who can attack the rim, especially if the defender's already helping off of him by trying to collapse on Giannis as he drives to the lane. I think it helps everybody. Having somebody that's such a singular force on offense, the way that he attacks the basket with such ferocity, I think helps everybody in this offense. And I think it would help Bam Adebayo. So I don't see that there's a clash necessarily. And I know you've made the comparison before. Like when you look at where Giannis was his most effective and when you look at their title run, like they had a guy like Brook Lopez out there. Brook had evolved into a three-point shooter in his tenure with Milwaukee, and he was very effective that way on offense, kind of as a secondary complementary player to Giannis' attacking skills. And I don't know that Bam is at that level, but I think he could be complementary in that way. And I think you have enough shooting around Giannis if you were able to acquire him that wouldn't necessarily be any kind of significant clash or anything like that. I think Giannis is such a great player and such a singular force that you kind of figure it out. Like you add him and you worry about the rest later on. That's on everybody else. It's like it's up to Bam yet again to kind of figure out what his role playing alongside Giannis will be. But if you can make that move, you don't keep yourself from making that move by saying, well, I don't know who he's going to fit alongside Bam. That's not the worry. That's not what's going to hold you back. It's like, well, I don't know how we're going to get these two guys. You'll figure it out. One way or the other, you have to have faith in Bam Adebayo. You have to have faith in Eric Spoelstra that they're going to be able to determine something that allows both players to maximize what they can do and allows them to continue to thrive together on the court. Because I think, as you said, the addition of Giannis probably only takes place with Bam Adebayo on this roster because they're represented by somebody similar, because they've got great skill sets, because you need a guy like Bam to help you in order to win a title. And I think Bam has evolved enough over the course of this season where you could say he's not going to be a hindrance or in any way to what Giannis can do on the court.
If I see the argument that Bam and Giannis can't fit together, and either that's an argument to not trade for Giannis or to trade Bam for Giannis or anything like that, if my eyes rolled any harder, they would fall off the 11th floor of this apartment building that I'm sitting in right now. Like this. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I understand fit. I get it. But at some point, talent trumps fit. So what? You're just not going to trade for Giannis because you don't think he fits right with Bam? Or you're going to argue that you have to trade Bam to get Giannis because you think Kel'el Ware is a better fit with Giannis? The problem with that argument, and we could talk about the basketball and the X's and O's, and I agree with everything you just said, David, in terms of an X's and O's perspective. You are 100% right. But before we even get there, to your point, Giannis and Bam share an agent, Alex Saratis of Octagon Sports. If Giannis is going to end up in Miami, it's going to be to play with Bam. You also, you know who doesn't care about fit as much as other people? Superstar players, because they believe they can make everything work. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But LeBron James made it work with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade because at some point the talent just trumps the fit. Talent and fit it's a sliding scale, right? You need a little bit of both. You need talent, fit. You either need enough talent to subvert the fit, or you need a good enough fit where the talent doesn't matter as much, and then you have like a sum that's greater than the sum of their parts type of thing.
Right.
In this instance, the talent is such that I couldn't care less about your stupid fit concerns. I don't care. Giannis makes it work with Ryan freaking Rollins. The Bucks are 11-11 with Giannis makes it work. Give him a superstar player. And again, Giannis isn't going to care about that. What Giannis cares about is going to a team that he thinks he can compete with. And if he thinks that he can get traded to that team and compete with that team, that's when he signs the extension. Giannis is going to want to play with Bam. I am telling you that right now. And Pat Riley and nobody else on the planet can convince Giannis, hey, you know who's a better fit for you? Kel'el Ware. Giannis doesn't want to play with a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He wants to play with a guy who's been in the NBA Finals twice. Listen to Giannis's comments at the end of some of these Bucks games, talking about, reminiscing about the fact about the championship-winning teammates that he used to play with, and the fact that he doesn't have those guys anymore. He wants to play. You can listen to his comments, and you could say, if there's a teammate on planet Earth that he could play with, it might be Bam. Bam is all the things that Giannis wants to play with in terms of professionalism and communication and basketball IQ and all these things. That's what Giannis is looking for, not your three-point shooting percentage at the center's position. Giannis believes he can make it work. And by the way, he can make it work. Let's do the X's and O's part. Bam is developing as a three-point shooter. All that stuff will come along even more with Giannis. You know what? Forget it. I'll even ask a dumber question, a simpler question.
Okay.
Did it not work with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? That team made 2 NBA finals. You know who's also a horrible basketball fit? Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. You couldn't find a worse 1-2 fit in the league. Not to say they were bad players, but as a duo together, high basketball IQ, off the charts, all that stuff, 2 guys who were reluctant to shoot a lot and could not space the floor. Bam has gotten to be a better floor spacer since then, and those Jimmy Butler Bam teams got to the highest heights, made 2 NBA finals because Jimmy would turn into playoff Jimmy in the postseason, and all of a sudden the talent trumped the fit, where the talent did not trump the fit in the regular season when Jimmy Butler was sandbagging the entire regular season. Well, guess what? Giannis is just playoff Jimmy all the freaking time. 365 days a year. He doesn't wait for a month out of the season to do it. He's just it always. So I don't want to hear any of that stuff. Like, I don't want to hear it. Giannis and Bam, that's the vision. And whatever you got to do for the Miami Heat to make that happen is what you got to do to make it happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I keep thinking about one thing that probably matters a lot more to those players, like when you talk about what their perspective is on a trade or fit or anything like that. Like, Giannis knows what it's like to be defended by Bam Adebayo.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot to it. Like, as good as anybody can defend Giannis, Bam is the best at it. And because he has that strength, the versatility, because he has the mobility, I think there's a respect level there that as a common fan, you can't understand. And he knows that when he's going into the quote unquote battle of a high stakes NBA game, you want a guy like Bam Adebayo at your side because he's been there before, because he knows what it's like, because Giannis has been on the receiving end of what it's like to be defended by Bam Adebayo, and knows that that might be something that is a difficult challenge for any one player to try and surmount. And you know what? And this is a really old reference here, so forgive me for those people who don't know this, but I think of those late 60s, early 70s New York Knicks teams when they had Walt Frazier. And what did they go and do? Trade for Earl the Pearl Monroe? And everybody's had the same concerns. It's like, oh, there's only one ball. How do you share that? 2 point guards at all NBA levels. Like, what are you going to do? Well, you know what you do? You go and win a championship and you compete for a couple more seasons. And that's what you do. And I think even though there's a similar position here between Giannis and Bam being kind of 4-5s that are big, athletic, and mobile, you'll figure it out. Like, there's enough talent there.
This too is you'll stagger them.
Right.
And you'll always have one of those guys not only anchoring your defense. Giannis, who won a Defensive Player of the Year award. Bam, who's a perennial finalist and should have won the year that Marcus Smart wrongly won it. These guys are defensive anchors. So you're going to get 48 minutes of world-class defense. And now imagine Bam going from your number one option to anchoring your second unit. That's a different kind of thing. That's a luxury now that the Miami Heat can have. That, it's a no-brainer. And to me, I'm taking Bam. I am doing whatever it takes to make sure that if I'm getting Giannis, I'm getting Bam. Not only because of the basketball reasons, and I think there are plenty, but also because Giannis is only signing that extension if Bam's on the team. And if you want Giannis, that means you're keeping Bam. Right. So to me, again, this is the dumbest question that's out there on Heat Twitter or whatever. It's just like, why would you should trade Bam for Giannis and keep all the young guys? Maybe you believe that. You could go ahead and make the basketball argument. Okay, doesn't matter. Giannis isn't coming and staying if Bam's not on the team. So there it is. Let's move on to some other trade targets. The Warriors, they're expected to call back Andrew Wiggins, according to this new report. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of a potential Andrew Wiggins for Jonathan Kuminga swap after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moments. Getting tickets, though, well, that part hasn't always been so simple. And that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and you get tickets locked in within minutes. You'll love seeing the all-in price up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. You know exactly what you're going to pay and exactly what you're going to get. And you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting. If there's a venue that you've never been to, or you're seeing an event that maybe you've never attended before, you want to check out, well, you know what? where exactly am I going to be able to see the stage? What am I going to be able to see from my seats? Well, they've got a great view from the seat feature that makes the decision even easier than before. You'll get the best deals at the best prices. You choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you can save a lot of money. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at really solid prices close to tip-off. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON. You get $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. We'll be right back.
We have some trade-related questions from the text line. You can get text from us and submit questions for the post-game shows with the link in the show notes. You can text 786-998-7029. We've been asked about a bunch about Jonathan Kuminga, and we have this report from late last week that the Warriors could ask the Heat about bringing Andrew Wiggins back in a swap for Jonathan Kuminga. This trade idea comes from Colin, who has a three-way trade idea where the Heat get Giannis, Gary Trent Jr., Quentin Post from the Warriors, and then the two Antetokounmpo brothers again for whatever reason, I guess, assuming that Giannis wants to keep playing with them. The Warriors get Norm Powell and Taurean Prince, and the Bucks get Terry Rozier's contract, Fontecchio, Kel'el Ware, Jonathan Kuminga, and then 5 first-round picks in total, 2 coming from Miami, 3 coming from Golden State. I could poke holes in this trade idea, David. I don't know that we like 3 first-round picks from the Warriors. The Warriors are giving up 3 first-round picks for Norm Powell. That doesn't make as much sense to me, but we could quibble with that. The idea that the Heat could use trading, I guess, Powell to the Warriors, I would argue we should swap Wiggins for the Powell spot here because Wiggins might be the guy that the Warriors actually want here.
Yeah, that makes
sense. But could you trade Wiggins to Golden State, get Kuminga, and then use Kuminga in another trade to go get Giannis? That to me is a little interesting, right? Because I do think there's no question Wiggins is the better basketball player. But if you're the Bucks, you would rather take a flyer on Kuminga. Kuminga has more use for a rebuilding Milwaukee Bucks team in a post-Giannis world than Andrew Wiggins does for them.
Yeah. I think that's the right attitude. It's what does Milwaukee see their future being, and they'd rather take the chance on somebody that has more potential and who's a little bit younger than an older player, et cetera. So I think that makes sense, and I think Colin's idea is along the right track, even if the details of the trade don't necessarily make a lot of sense or aren't a perfect fit necessarily. It's about making sure that you get a bigger deal, and we see this all the time. And I think any trade for Giannis, again, the Luka deal has broken so many minds, I think, in terms of the couch GMing, where it's these secretive deals done in the dark where you wake up and next thing you know, you're getting a tweet from Shams at 3:00 in the morning saying, yeah, AT for Luka makes total sense, right? It's that. I mean, in our years of covering the league, that's happened the one time. In their years even following the league before that, it's never happened before. That just never happens. You never get that where there's no smoke at all, and all of a sudden there's not the fire, but just everything's burning down to the ashes. So it's always a bigger deal, especially when you're including
the Jimmy Butler trade was a bigger deal, right? Than Toronto, and they got Davion Mitchell out of it, and
that had been building and fermenting for a long time. So it's got to be a bigger deal where you want to include a third team that might be able to add something that Miami doesn't have available to them.
It's everybody's scratching each other's backs, right? Hey, the Warriors, you're looking for more of a win now player. The Bucks, you're looking for younger players that you could rebuild with. How can we all help each other? And I do think that there's something to be said. Okay, so let's just start with a Kuminga for Wiggins swap, right? I saw it out there. Warriors fans are out there the Heat should do it. They're not going anywhere. They could get younger, whatever. It's if I'm the Heat, we're not having that conversation.
Yeah.
Wiggins for Kuminga? No. Kuminga and what? What else are you throwing in that trade for me to at least not hang the phone up?
Right.
And it has to be at least 1 first-round pick. Is that Kuminga contract even a good contract at this point? What has he proven? I don't know. Wiggins is a helpful basketball player. I don't know that Kuminga is. And so I don't know that he isn't, but I don't know that he is. And I know that Wiggins is, and he's on a team-friendly contract right now. The thing is, Wiggins' contract could come off the books. He's got a player option. Kuminga's contract is I think it's a team option for next year, so that's up to you. So if you're the Heat, there is a level of this, right? If you want to do chess, not checkers, you could say, well, either we can do this three-way deal with the Bucks involved, and this is super clean. We don't have to have these concerns. But if Giannis isn't traded at the trade deadline, and we do have to start thinking about accumulating assets to go put ourselves in a stronger position to potentially get Giannis this summer, at that point, swapping Wiggins for Kuminga before the deadline could make some sense, because now, at the very least, we'll have Kuminga's contract to use in a trade, whereas the Wiggins contract gets a little complicated because it would have to be signed and traded and stuff like that potentially. Kuminga's also, like we already established, makes a little bit more sense for Milwaukee post Giannis. Yeah. And I'm assuming if I'm doing this deal at all, I'm getting a draft pick out of it too. And as we know how important that is for a Heat team. So in a potential Giannis trade. So I do think there's levels to this, David.
Absolutely. And I just think that Miami has no interest in a guy like Kuminga because he's just not a proven player. Like, that's how they tend to operate. Like, maybe a guy could have like not necessarily a dysfunctional past, but maybe not the most checkered or the most decorated past. And they did it with Alonzo Mourning, but Alonzo was already playing at such a high level.
Established player.
He was, and he was younger, and he was entering his prime at a point in time when you needed the center in order to dominate, and that's what Pat Riley did, and he made that move right away. They don't tend to have the "we can fix them" attitude with younger players. It's like, you know what, we can fix you if you're 30 or 31, and maybe you've kind of soured a little bit because we know where your head's at, where you want to go in there and compete. I'll let Jimmy Butler. Like, that was an approach where they said, you know what, we know how competitive this guy is. Anything that's happened in his past, it's only because he prioritizes winning over becoming friends. And that's fine. We like that attitude. We're perfectly cool with that. And it worked really well for 5 seasons.
The other thing about this, too, is that Eric Spoelstra and Steve Kerr have a very close relationship. And if Steve Kerr looked at Kuminga and said, not good enough for my rotation, Eric Spoelstra's going to look at that and is like, well, if it wasn't good enough for my buddy Steve's rotation, it's probably not going to be good enough for my rotation either. And you hear the things that Kuminga is saying either through the media or leaks or whatever, and it's how he wants to have the ball in his hands more, he wants to be empowered more. I don't know that he's going to find that in Miami, right? And so it might not be the best spot for Kuminga either, although every player likes at least the idea of playing in Miami. But I don't know it would be the best fit for him either.
I like the idea that Mike Dunleavy Jr. is also a guy that has operated with Miami in the past. So there's a familiarity between the front offices, obviously the Jimmy Butler deal. And so that kind of greases the wheel a little bit. And if you're going to take on this trade, or at least include Golden State and be like, listen, we can both get something we want here. And we'll just be facilitating Milwaukee into the deal here. It makes a lot of sense there. So that's the kind of bigger overview of these trades. It's like, you know what, we're working with somebody else that we feel comfortable with, that we know isn't trying to screw us over. We're going to help them. They're going to help us. And we're all going to help each other as part of a 3-team deal.
I don't know that the Warriors would be willing to include a first-round pick in a Kuminga for Wiggins swap. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But to me, that's where the conversation. It's not a no. We're not closing the door on it. But I think what we're trying to say here is you don't do Wiggins for Kuminga. You do Wiggins for Kuminga, so plus maybe another asset in order to bolster your potential trade package for Giannis either now or in the summer. Thanks for tuning in today to Locked On Heat. Make sure you subscribe, follow Locked On Heat so you get all the latest episodes. We'll talk to you soon.